Mary Magdalene, another film which both you and I have seen, biblical drama, opening in the run up to Easter, presumably hoping to repeat the box office success of Passion of the Christ, which went on to be, I think, the biggest selling non-English language movie. Blah 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 blah. But Mary Magdalene looks unlikely to sort of set the world alight in that same way. It's essentially a people call it a revisionist take, although that's not entirely fair, take on the figure of Mary Magdalene, who for centuries was characterized by Western Christianity as essentially a fallen woman, I think was the term they used. Despite there being absolutely no basis for this whatsoever, the claim apparently dates back to Pope Gregory, who declared her to be a penitent prostitute in the year, whatever it was.
521, I think.
591, I think.
Okay.
But what's 70 years between friends when we're talking about
in the 6th century? Yes.
Exactly. And so and it's also an idea which has found parlance in movies. I mean, if you look at movies from Martin Scorsese to Mel Gibson, this idea is sort of perpetuated over and over again. Although Catholic Church has now sort of formally identified her, I think, as the apostle of the apostles. Something happened in 1969, then another one in 2016. So anyway. The original script for Mary Magdalene was written by Helen Edmondson, and as far as I understand, that was then rewritten by Philippa Goslet. Helen Edmondson is a very, very brilliant playwright who I had been at university with, and I know she's a fantastically talented writer. And anyway, so story is we meet Mary essentially as an independent woman. She's acting as a midwife. She's a rebel. She doesn't want to be married off by her family. She's free-spirited, which makes them think that she's possessed by demons. She sees a charismatic preacher in the shape of Jesus, and seeing what she thinks as a fellow rebel, she agrees to follow him. The other disciples are unsettled by her presence, thinking that that the Messiah is treating her with some sort of form of favoritism, but she becomes central to his teaching, not least in a scene in which he addresses a group of women folk who would traditionally have no voice. Here's a clip.
Mary, he's waiting. Look.
What shall I teach?
Are we so different from men? You must teach us different things.
We're women. Our lives are not our own.
Your spirit's your own. And you alone answer for that. And your spirit is precious to God. As precious as that of your husband or your father.
Then who should we obey? If God commands one thing, but our husbands, our fathers, tell us another.
You must follow God.
So are we to defy them and leave our lives behind?
Yes. Though they judge you, persecute you, but you must forgive them.
So Joaquin Phoenix there doing Joaquin Phoenix, incidentally wearing exactly the same beard and hair arrangement as he wears in You Were Never Really Here, although bizarrely he is more charismatic in You Were Never Really Here. So the thing about the film is this: it is an interesting and admirable idea, and there are many people who will go and see it who will know only the sort of the Sunday school teaching version of Mary Magdalene, and this does a pretty decent job of representing her in a new light, of presenting her in her own light. I just wish that the film itself was better than it is. I mean, it's beautiful to look at, but it's also weirdly inert. And whatever you think of Mel Gibson's Passion of the Christ, it had grit, it had conviction. It's very hard to go from that. You have a movie, a huge box office success movie in which characters are speaking in Latin, Aramaic, Hebrew, in which they look like they've walked out of the Old Testament, to this in which the characters are all speaking English with a sort of faint, slightly nondescript inflections, and they all look to some extent as if they've walked out of a perfume advert. There are moments when I had to banish the spectre of Life of Brian,
Yes,
which makes it.
absolutely.
But so it's not just me, right? That there are moments when you felt the same thing.
No, I mean, I thought it was a mark of the success of the film that it was about 20 minutes before. I mean, there is a section where they all shout, "He's the Messiah," you know, and then that voice in your head goes no, he's just a naughty boy.
But what it's lacking is the dirt under the fingernails, the grit that, for example, Passion of the Christ had. The other thing is that, I mean, it plays the biblical stuff with a very, very straight bat. Joaquin Phoenix's character, bizarrely, his Messiah, has the air of a false prophet about him, and I couldn't figure out whether that was deliberate or not deliberate, considering that everything is played completely straight down the line as far as the stories and healings are concerned. But there's a weird sense that you get an interesting setup in which you're represented with this character and you think, okay, this is going to be great. But then it very rapidly descends into a rather sort of an exercise that is not so much soul searching as box ticking. I can't imagine anyone being offended by it. I know some people have said, it's going to be a controversial movie. I can't imagine that at all because it is very reverential with its subject matter. I mean, weirdly enough, I was expecting from the pre-publicity something which was much more in the line of, Pasolini's Gospel according to Matthew. But this is actually closer in its tone to, oddly enough, Jesus Christ Superstar. It's not. It's oddly unengaging considering how interesting the subject matter is.